How'd you find all those letters?
Well, some of my mom had copies of some. The original one that I have, she had. And I think most of the letters were kind of, different ones got different letters, you know. And then, of course, they were in a book. Some of the translations were in a book.
And you did all the translations that are in there?
I did what I could with the help of someone else who had more experience than I had in reading them. Because you can tell by the lettering or the writing that this was from.
Yeah, it's interesting the different words that they used. And
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was skimming through your translations, looking at them. I don't think I could ever
He
figure
wrote
them.
this, G.B. Woody wrote this to his sister. There was one girl, and they named her Tennessee. And he says, sis, and he wrote her one and only daughter. She was 8 to 10 years old. No date on the letter, and also believed it was sent in another letter home. And he said, sis, Tennessee Eliza, I drop you this note to let you know I am well and hain't forgot you. I can almost see you now carrying the baby out of the garden to keep him from your pretty flowers. And I wish I was there to walk in the garden with you in Wardell, to see your roses and pinks and all your pretty things, how it would please me. So will you be smart and obey mother and help her do all you can, and may God bless you in my prayer. Farewell, sis, G.B. Woody. Now, Wardell was one of his brothers. So. And then he wrote to Wyatt, who would be 7 or 9, and believed to be in with a letter to Catherine, his wife, Catherine Keziah, at some time. This was from a heritage book, the Toe River Valley, Volume 9, page 477. Wyatt dear, named to me, I often think of you and wonders if I ever will see your face, and the word I can't make out. Scarred back that once dressed so often anymore. I do want to see you. Yes, I know I do, and if we both live long, I will see you again. Run after the calf, or drive the chickens out of the garden for your mother, and do all for her you can, and write to me if you have any beans and potatoes to eat. You all must send me a letter. Farewell for this time.
It's so interesting that you were able to read those letters. I couldn't really make out much of anything.
Well, some of this was, like I say, was published. And in those heritage books, wealth of information. And there's 12 of those volumes.
Oh, wow.
And so a lot of information about the Yancey County, I think Dow County, and Burke County back in the early, late 1800s and early 1900s.
So, yeah, so she has one of the original letters in there from your great-grandfather. That's pretty neat. Here, I'll come over there and we'll... It's pretty neat. It's interesting how thick the paper is, too. Yeah, just on the front. Had that been folded up for a while?
Yes, yeah.
And there was also in here, we were flipping through, there was a Confederate States of America, I think it was a $50 bill.
It had 50 on it.
And she said that that was in her mom's stuff, but we don't really know where it came from.
Thought it was in here.
Was it? It was in one of the. I thought it was too in that one. Maybe it wasn't in that one.
Here it is.
Oh, there it is. Yeah. So we don't know if it's real or not, but we really have no reason to think that it's not.
Because of all this stuff was, I guess, together. And this is his pay.
Oh, how much did he earn back in those days?
Yeah.
Does it say how much he earned? $50?
I guess. His signature. 1864.
So that was at the very end of the war.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if maybe he had that $50 bill and then the Confederate States folded and it wasn't worth anything and they just hung on to it.
That's it. He was wounded. He carried the flag, as far as I understand, somewhere in here. It tells about his serving. But he was wounded in the cheek, his face. But that's all it said, you know, when he was discharged.
That picture that's in there of the grave, where is that grave at?
That's oh, that's not it. That's up. Let me see. They did a memorial service up there one year. Here it is. It's a woody cemetery.
It's a woody cemetery? The whole cemetery is woodies?
The whole cemetery, and that's where Sarah, my great-grandmother, great-great-grandmother, great-great-grandfather are buried.
Wow. Is that around here in North Carolina?
No, yeah, it's in Wanda would know. I can't think of the name of it right now.
Is that the official name of it? Is the Woody Cemetery? Yeah, interesting.
Probably tells in here somewhere. But this is grave of Greenberry Woody here. Where it was taken, the honor guard.
How many people do you think are buried in that
Well,
cemetery?
I went up there not long after I came here. And at that time, a dozen or more. And there's probably more since then. Because it was still being, cared for and everything.
Well, do you want to... Here, I'm going to stop this video right here, and we'll do another chapter.
The old Woody home place was purchased in 1912.
So now we're going to talk about Curtis Creek and this area in Old Fort, North Carolina, and how the family got here, and how the property has subsequently been divided over the years, and there's an old house and some other stuff. So that's where we're at now. Take it away.
Okay, the Woody old home place was purchased in 1912. My mother and her twin brother and the younger children, my mother was 3 years old when they moved from Yancey County to here. And my my grandfather died of blood poisoning. He was many trades. He had many trades. He was in Yancey County. He was high sheriff of Yancey County for several years, and then when they moved over here, he bought 80 some acres, and he sold off some at the lower end in order to finish paying for what he kept, and he passed away from blood poisoning that he received, I guess, in his trade as blacksmith. And my grandmother then stayed on in the old home place, and a couple of the children stayed with her until they married and moved away. And my grandmother then eventually went to Michigan with the boys came and took her up there so they could take care of her in her latter years. She died in 1956, and when she passed away, the remaining property was then divided amongst the 13 children, and the plots run 4.12 acres, and they run from lengthwise of the property. They crossed the creek and went up the other side. So the creek and the road was in the middle of everybody's property. Now this is a plot of the division of the land that they drew. The lots were numbered, and the heirs drew numbers, and whatever number they drew was that lot. And anybody that drew the home place was to trade with Aunt Alva, because her and her family were still living there. And of course they took care of the place until they passed away. It now belongs to their youngest daughter, well, their only daughter, Wanda Poole. And they take care of it. Her and her husband come up periodically and check it out, and then they have the grass cut and the lawn and the yard taken care of.
When was the last time anybody actually lived in that house?
Oh, it's been at least 10 years.
Oh, that's not long. I thought it was a long time ago.
Yeah, well, their daughter lived in it. They fixed it up, and the daughter lived in it for several years after her marriage. And then after she moved out, the youngest son then lived there for a while. And but no one's lived in it, I'd say, in the last 10 years.
Why were they not able to put it on the historical registry list?
Well, because they went in and modernized it and put sheetrock up in the bedrooms and put electricity. Of course, there was electricity and water in it long before Aunt Alvy passed away, but they put a bathroom in and modernized it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You would think that would have happened to a lot of houses, though, over the course of time, that houses would have been modernized, but, you know?
Well, I would think, especially some that are, like, it's over 100 years old. A lot of the homes that are 100 years old would have to be.
Yeah, because people used them. Yeah. So what about the schoolhouse that used to be up here?
Okay. At the end, we call it the end of the property, was divided with an acre of land in the middle that housed the old schoolhouse. It was built to service the children that lived in this area.
Built by who?
Well, my grandfather and one of the Silver heirs were the ones that were instigated in building the schoolhouse.
Do you remember the schoolhouse building?
No.
It was gone a long time ago.
Now this is the schoolhouse. My mother put it in the newspaper. She used to make articles for the Old Fort Bulletin, a lot of pictures that she had, and she would write about them. And she said the little white schoolhouse on Curtis Creek, 1912. So it was built the year that they moved over here. A one-room school is where we went, and this is where our time was spent. Some things we learned aren't taught today. It's not in books, you've heard them say. We learned a lot, I'm very sure. From a stick they hid behind the door. The games we played aren't played today. Go Sheepy Go was one we played. The fox and goose and checkers too. Knee drops sometimes as what we do. We climb the fence, run through the field. The fresh plowed ground felt good to our heels. We'd play at home when school was out. Our fun was gone, there was no doubt. We picked up apples and fed the hogs, turned the cows out to pasture, then feed the dogs. Work all summer waiting for school. We had good teachers. I remember one rode a mule. All in one room, grades 1 to 7. It was to us kids like a little bit of heaven. We always cried the last day of school because our fun was over. Our work began to move. So all in all, the memories are here of the little white schoolhouse we loved so dear. And that was in the paper.
And what happened to that schoolhouse?
Well, eventually, I guess it was just left empty and deteriorated to the point where it was sold. The acre of land was sold on the courthouse steps for taxes. And the gentleman family that bought it built a brick house where the old schoolhouse is.
Interesting. So this is a picture. We've got a bunch of pictures here. This is a picture of the old house. I'm going to go down there in a little bit and take a video of it. Do you know when this picture was taken?
That was taken when my mother was 3. It was 1912.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting. I just rode by it earlier, and I said, oh, well, it's got lattice on the front. I was thinking that someone had put lattice up in the recent years, but it looked like it's always had lattice. And so you were born in this house, right?
Yes, I was.
Oh, yeah. How old is this picture? Not very.
And that's a earlier one. That was just taken probably a couple years ago.
Which room were you born in the house?
The front bedroom.
Which?
Let me see. Yeah, right here.
You were born in that front bedroom? Wow, were you the only person that was born?
No, my brother John, my brother Bob, and a bunch of cousins were all born in that house.
Let's see what else. Okay, so I got some other interesting pictures we'll look at now. So this is a picture of the train that used to come through Old Fort, North Carolina. These were just some random pictures that I guess you had from over the years. This is a picture of an old hotel that used to be in Old Fort, and we don't know who the guy is right here. Do we? You don't know who this guy is? Yeah, we don't know who that guy is, because I made the point that it's interesting that neither him nor the old hotel is centered in the shot. That's a picture of one of the classes at the schoolhouse. What's that a picture of?
That's a decoration day at the cemetery.
Oh, wow.
Curtis Creek.
And then this picture of like the V-shaped wood. What is that?
That's a flume. Now I can tell you about that.
Okay.
There was a tanning mill down in Old Fort back, I'm not sure the dates, but my grandfather and my uncles cut wood, chestnut wood, and it would go down that flume to the end of the road, and the tannery would use that wood in making the leather.
Oh, wow.
And this is a picture of them.
Wow.
Working. And I think there's another one.
That must have been backbreaking work. What's this? Is this a picture of that as well?
Yeah, that's a picture of the logs on a wagon.
Who are these people? I might say.
That's my grandmother,
Oh, yeah.
grandfather, and grandmother.
So that's Green Bee and Mary Wood, Green Bee Jr. and Mary Woody.
Yeah, and this is Green Bee and Catherine Keziah. My great-grandfather and grandmother.
And then I guess this is a picture of a class of students on the schoolhouse.
Yeah.
I mean, a class of students on the steps of the schoolhouse.
Right.
And it has it all listed out. So did you know anyone that went to that schoolhouse?
My mom, my uncle, yeah. Several uncles.
So how many of the family members still own land or live on the Curtis Creek Road?
Well, all of my aunts and uncles are gone. Just the children of their children still own property. Not a whole lot though anymore. Angela owns John's. Carolyn was married to Paul, his brother. She's still there. Of course, Wanda and Ted, all John's brothers and sisters, they own their little pieces. But the rest of it has been sold out. John owned the most land. He owned this over here. He owns 2 lots. I'd say he owns 12 acres over here. And then 2 lots, which would be 8, 9 acres where his house is.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What about the sawmill? Tell us about the history of the sawmill that's on the corner.
Well, that belonged to John, and he just made a good living down there. And everybody knew him. He was very smart in what he did. He built our bridge.
What all did he make at that sawmill? Just raw lumber or other stuff?
Yeah, he did rough cut lumber, and he would cut it to anybody's specifications. I remember some of the specialty things he did. He made a 90-foot mast for a sailboat. A man from some other state, South Carolina, I think, commissioned him to make that staff for his sailboat mast. Wow. And he made very well on it, and he made it, and he found the tree, and he from there he made the mast.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I remember the one time I went in there, which that was a long time ago. There was a bunch of like mantle pieces and stuff.
Well, he did all this work.
Are all those mantle pieces and all still in there?
Probably.
Yeah, in that building. Yeah.
Yeah. He sold a lot of things when he became disabled. He still, would sell what he had already. He sold the mill, and they came and got it piece by piece. The shop and everything still belongs to Angela, his daughter. Property and the shop and everything. But
well, let's talk about, I guess here, I'm going to stop it right here and we'll do one last chapter. All right, so I guess this will be our last chapter. We're just going to talk about a couple different things and just wrap it up. All right, so first question, have you ever found any arrowheads or Indian artifacts up here?
yes, down by the creek, And when they would plow the fields here to plant whatever they were going to plant, they would then walk the banks and look for artifacts, look for arrowheads, and a lot of them would collect them and put them in displays. And John had a bunch, but Dad had some and Mom had some. I think are in that china cabinet somewhere. And but my Uncle Riss, who's Mom's twin brother, when he would come up here in the summer and spend 2 weeks with Mom through their birthdays. They were born on July 9th in 1909. And they would, in their latter years, would get together up here. And but he would walk the creek bank and he would find arrowheads. And I know one time Mom and John Smith played a joke on him. She got John to carve an arrowhead out of wood and got a rock, took a rock down by the creek and dug out a little hole and laid that wooden arrowhead in there and just laid the rock where you could see just part of it. And they watched him go down there, and he was walking up and down the bank looking for arrowheads, kicking the dirt, and he kicked that rock and he picked that one up and he just thought he had found something wonderful and then discovered it was wood.
Oh,
And
wow.
he knew what had happened. He knew that they had played a joke on him. But yeah, they did, yeah, lots of them, and perfectly, some of them are in perfect shape.
Have you ever seen any bears up here?
Yes, sir. There's, at this very time, there are 3 or 4 that live up on the ridge behind me. And I've got videos of them. My neighbor has cameras up there. And there's one video I have that shows 2 or 3. Shows 3. And another one shows a bear sleeping and stretching and
Oh, wow.
spending some time right in front of the camera.
Oh, wow.
So yeah.
Um,
And one year I had one come down in the yard, and I had a dog at that time, Tina, and we had been outdoors, and it was just at dusk. The sun was just going down, and we come around the side of the house, and she took off. And she chased the bear down through the field. And it was a big bear. And the baby bear run up the side of the mountain. So I finally got Tina, got my dog back and put her in the basement. And I could hear that little cub crying up on the hill. And I called John, I told him, and Beth come over. She was living in the big house at that time. She come over, and we stood out on the back porch, and John said, "Do not go out there." He said, "You stay close in the house." He said, "Because that mama's going to come and get that baby, and you don't want to be out there around it." So we stood there until the baby stopped crying for its mama, and we knew that she had come and got it, and they went on up the hill.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was one I saw in my backyard, a biggie.
Why is it named Curtis Creek? Do you know?
Yes, there's a grave up about halfway down. We're 2.25 miles up Curtis Creek from Highway 70, and about halfway down, there's a grave up on the side of a mountain where there used to be a house, and a man named Curtis was buried up there, and evidently he was very well known and endeared in the area, so the road was named after him.
You had told me one time that this was a long time ago that there's not as much water in the creek as there used to be.
No.
Why do you think that is?
I think that's because up above us here is what they call Newberry Creek, and it comes down from a different, what do they call it?
Like a tributary or something?
Tributary, yeah, it comes down from a different tributary, and it meets Curtis's Creek. And together, that's what fills this creek down here. Okay, there's so much building that's been done up on Newberry. It's just a lot of houses, a lot of turning the roads and all, and turning the creek and all like that. That I think that's the factor that there's not as much water coming down. Now, when it rains, like we had 2 or 3 days rain here just last week, that creek got up, and it got up over the big rock, you know. And
well, tell us about, I guess, the 20s and the 30s and what you've heard in the Great Depression and the CCC camp and the moonshining and all that.
the CC camps was one up on Curtis Creek. It was a large camp. It was quite a few men who were there. My dad was one of them. When he was 19, he was a member of the CCs, and he learned to drive a bulldozer while he was with them, and he helped build the Blue Ridge Parkway up through Kentucky.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
Did the CC build all of that, the Blue Ridge Parkway, or do you know?
that's what they were doing in this area, amongst other things.
Wow.
They built a lot of dams and watersheds and things like that were needed. That's why I say it was a large camp. And the photo album that I had, I donated to the museum here so they could have the pictures and all. But it was a big camp. They had housing and equipment and everything like that. So yeah.
So it was pretty tough times.
Yeah.
Back in those days up here, yeah. And then how did was the moonshining before the Great Depression or kind of during the Great Depression? Or do you know?
When what was?
The moonshining.
Well, I'm going to say the moonshining probably was in and about all of that. As young men learned how to do different things, that was one way to make money. And during the Depression, of course, there was harder times, but my uncles, amongst others in the area around here, cousins probably, they all worked had stills.
Probably everybody was in it back then.
Yeah. It was just a sideline to help, with large families. And even though on my mom's and her dad's farm here, they grew everything that they had. I mean, it was the money that they made was from the timber that they cut for the tannery, and my grandfather's blacksmithing, and some of the boys were good at carpentry and stuff like that. My mom and my aunt used to cut what they call sprays and would sell them to florists, sprays that they would put in their arrangements. They would go up in the woods and they would cut sprays, and they'd get $5 probably for a bundle or whatever. They used to do that.
Wow.
My mom had bees. My dad originally had the bees. He died in 1973, and and she took over after that, and she had 16 beehives that she worked and sold honey to make supplement to her income. And when she got where she couldn't take care of them, she sold the whole hives to someone else, and got the money from them. So
Interesting.
very industrious people. They very independent and very industrious.
Yeah, it's amazing just in 50 or 100 years how much things have changed.
My mother never wasted anything, and that come from, I guess, growing up in a large household family and not having a whole lot. She has told us stories about finding swarms of bees, and she never let one go unattended. She would find a swarm up in a tree or somewhere, and she would get a bucket and get on a ladder in her 70s, climb up that ladder and get the queen and put it in the bucket, and the rest of them would go in there. She'd bring that down and she'd put it in a hive, so she would have a new or an additional part of a beehive.
Oh, wow.
And she said a bear got in her beehives one time, and of course all of us were living away. She was here by herself, and she took care of everything here. And a bear got in her beehives one time and tore up a couple of the hives. So she decided if he come back, she was going to be waiting for him. So she got her in her little pickup truck and drove up into the garden where it was close to the hives, and she sat there all night with her shotgun. And I dare say if that bear had come around, she'd have had bear meat, because that's just how she was. I mean, she had chicken coop on the other side of the little spring out here in the back. She had a little bridge, and the chicken coop was on the side of the hill, and a skunk got in it when she went out to get the eggs, and the skunk was in there. And she got her gun, and she was going to shoot it, and she happened to mention it to John, and John says, "Let me come and take care of that." He said, "Because if you don't shoot at the right place, you'll ruin your chicken house." So he came and done away with the skunk. But she has caught snakes and things like that and taken care of what's hers.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, she's very, very independent.
All right, well, I guess that's all I got for you. And I'll, either today or tomorrow, I'll just take a couple of videos of the different things we talked about, and we'll put it all together.
Well, about the moonshining, in 1942, 3 or 4, maybe, in around that time, a lot of my uncles, plus my family, moved to Michigan because they were afraid that possibly the moonshining kept on, that a lot of them might get to have to serve time. So the older boys said, "Okay, we're going to go to Michigan and find jobs." We had relatives up there, so that's how they decided to go there.
Oh, wow.
And my uncles got, 3 of my uncles got jobs with the county, running big machinery, and did very well. My Uncle Riss, my mom's twin brother, he became a foreman to a construction company, and he helped build most of the Detroit Zoo. He built the gorillas house, whatever, and the lion's den, and we used to go and visit him because that's what we were so proud of, that he had
That's cool.
done those things. Yeah. He
I
did
thought
very well.
I thought of something else I wanted to ask you about. Well, let me circle back to the moonshine. Did a lot of the people end up having to serve time, or even get caught, or do you know?
Not that I know of.
Just kind of
No, none
dead
of my
end.
uncles ever got caught, but I do know that Mom said that they did partake in
Sure.
having still.
That I mean, sir, the boat called the Captain's Quarters. I saw a picture of it when I was flipping through these books. Do you know which book that's in?
I just saw that, I think.
Here, I'll pause it until we find the picture.